Now, I think it's fair to say that Game Week 11 was literally one of the worst game weeks in FPL history, but we can put that behind us now. Here are the talking points going into Game Week 12. Now, the first one I wanted to cover, Destiny Udogie with a suspension and Dan Burn with, unfortunately, an injury to his back that's going to keep him out for a few months. Couple of players there that are very heavily owned in FPL. I think with the situation that's going on at Spurs at the moment, bit of doubt over Maddison, which we'll get onto. Romero and Van de Ven being injured as well. Who knows what's going to happen with that Spurs team. And as a result, I think it's probably worth selling Destiny Udogie if you have him. And of course, Dan Burn being out for a few months, he's a sell as well. So what I've done is I've put together some decent replacements. First up then, I think Crystal Palace are emerging as one of the best defences in the league so far this season, and their next 4 fixtures are really attractive. Everton, Luton, West Ham and Bournemouth are 4 fixtures. West Ham's obviously a reasonably tricky one mixed in there, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Crystal Palace keep 2 or 3 clean sheets in that run. Mark Gahey, a starting centre-back for Crystal Palace, absolutely nailed in that starting 11, right? Comparatively with Anderson, his centre-back counterpart, 0.4 million cheaper. I know Anderson has gotten, I think, 3 attacking returns so far this season. But when you compare the two players for underlying numbers, there isn't too much between them, which suggests across the season, their level of returns is going to sort of level out. So I'd expect Gahey to pick up his returns in the next couple of weeks, to be honest. I've noticed in the last couple of Palace games that I have watched, he is getting on the end of corners. So I think it's only a matter of time before he heads one in. So wouldn't be surprised to see him pick up an attacking return coming up. And just in general, I think Palace are really looking good defensively. Without Elise and Eze in the team as well, they really had to rely on their defence to be solid. But I think with the likes of Eze back in the team, it means they can play more on the front foot, which in my opinion actually improves teams defensively. It means they can keep the ball more, keep the opposition from having the ball, offer a bit more in attack so the opposition, are less threatening. I really do think that's going to impact Palace's defence positively. With those next 4 fixtures, I think he's a really good option. Now, Mark Gahey isn't the only decent Palace defender. I'd actually argue that Mitchell is probably even better. Nailed again in that left-back position for Crystal Palace, and it might just be because Elise and Eze weren't in the team, but he seems to be getting forward more than he has done in previous seasons in the recent fixtures that he has played. As I said with Gahey, Palace are emerging as one of the best defences in the league so far this season, so you can always back him to keep clean sheets. And I think with the way he's been playing, you could actually probably back him to get some attacking returns. Comparing to Gahey, the underlying numbers are relatively similar in terms of attacking returns. They're not great, but there are some. So 0.4 XG, 0.8 expected assists. Gahey, 0.6, 0.2. So obviously Mitchell slightly more in the way of expected assists, which is to be expected for a fullback. I'd say just naturally as well, the fullback is a more attacking position than a centre-back, so naturally he's going to get forward a bit more. I think most of Gahey's attacking returns at least will come from set pieces. But he's 0.1 million cheaper. I'd say he's equally as nailed, probably in a more attacking position. I'd actually suggest he's probably the best Crystal Palace defender at 4.5 million, but either way, there's very little to choose between the two, and I think as a direct replacement for the likes of Destiny Udogie, you can't look past these 2 Palace defenders. Another one that probably more suits a replacement for Dan Burn, but I don't think you can ignore Jamal Lascelles at 4 million. A starting 4 million defender for Newcastle just seems ridiculous value to me. With Botman's unfortunate injury, I think Botman's still going to be out for another couple of months. It just seems like he's having some real complications with his knee injury, and I don't think he's going to rush back either when he is fit. I think his minutes will be managed because knee ligament injuries, which it sounds like he has, can be really troublesome. They can just niggle away at people for years and years and never really repair. So hopefully that's not the case with Botman, because he looks to be a really strong defender. But it obviously is reasonably good for Lascelles' chances in FPL of starting. Also, just a point about him, he's played really well. Botman last season was one of Newcastle's most important defenders, no doubt about it. He's not been in the team, and Newcastle have still managed to keep clean sheets. I think Lascelles' performances have really been brought up. I think he's really taken on that responsibility of filling in that hole. I put the next 4 fixtures are lovely in it. I'm not quite sure about that, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them keep a clean sheet against Chelsea or Man United, particularly at St James's Park. They seem to really be able to nullify the top teams there, and obviously the crowd and the atmosphere there is just unbelievable. So yeah, fixtures, the tough fixtures, clean sheets are definitely possible. 3 clean sheets from 5 starts so far this season. 4 million for a Newcastle defender. You can't go wrong. Now, I wondered if you could do me a favour. If you're enjoying the video so far, please make sure to leave a like rating, subscribe to the channel as well, set the notification bell so you can see when I upload next. If you're really enjoying the video, please consider joining as a channel member. You'll get early access to all of my videos, and when I deadline stream, I'll give you priority when I rate people's teams in Draft Hound. You can also, if you want to support the channel in a different way, check out my shop down below. You can buy yourself a golden goal sticker or a mug. All right, back to the video. So unfortunately, Tottenham had a bit of a nightmare in game week 11, didn't they? James Maddison left the field injured. He is another really popular FPL pick. We don't have a whole lot of news so far about his injury, although what we've got in terms of a backstory this season, he did get injured, well, injured in inverted commas, in a game that happened earlier in the season. He was seen leaving the Tottenham Stadium on a pair of crutches, and then he played the weekend after. So I don't think we can read too much into the Maddison injured sort of story yet. I think we have to wait and see what Ange says in his press conferences this week, but it can't help to eye up some potential replacements. Replacement number 1, and it's not a direct price replacement, right? It's a hell of a cut down in terms of price, but I think Eze is just an unbelievable option at 6.1 million. He didn't get off to the strongest start of the season, don't get me wrong, but Palace had some really tough fixtures mixed in there, and without Elise in the team, I think Eze really struggles. But not only is Eze back fit, Elise looks to be coming back fit too, and I would only expect it to be 1 or 2 game weeks before we see Elise starting for Palace again, which I think the trouble with Eze is teams know to mark him because he is Crystal Palace's by far and away their best player, so they can double team him. But when Elise's on the pitch, they have another real threat to worry about in the team as well, and that's only going to serve to give Eze some more space and be more threatening. But he came off the bench against Burnley, got an assist. I think he's going to start against Everton. No doubt in my mind that he'll start against Everton. We all know he takes the penalties and free kicks, and it's just the talisman for Crystal Palace at the moment. As I said, with Gahey and Mitchell, they've got some really nice fixtures coming up. 6.1 million for the attacking upside that this guy has. I think it's just fantastic. And at 3.1% ownership as well, he's a really nice differential. He's just a set and forget option, to be honest, because we all know that Crystal Palace can show up against the really big teams and get some upset performances. I think Eze is going to be getting some attacking returns against the big teams as well. So I wouldn't say he's fixture proof by any stretch, but that Liverpool at home game week 16, I wouldn't be too worried about starting Eze for that one. He just feels like a nice, safe, set and forget option. Now, to be fair, you might already have Bukayo Saka, but I think he is, if you have the money in the bank, the safest replacement for James Maddison. Yes, the last few game weeks, he's not been firing in terms of attacking returns. To be honest, Arsenal in general have not been firing going forward. But for me, Saka is a player that is just so solid and consistent across, the last couple of seasons in terms of returns. If you bring him in and you're patient with him, you're going to be rewarded. I think he's ridiculously underpriced at 8.6 million, to be honest. I think if FPL made him 10 million, people at the start of the season would still have picked him. I think he's nearly 2 million underpriced for the potential that he has. We all know that he's not been taking all the penalties for Arsenal, but he is their designated penalty taker, so across the season he is going to get some penalties, and he's just absolutely nailed on that right-hand side for Arsenal. We've seen both Odegaard and Martinelli now be rotated. Saka's only not played when he's been injured, and even when he's had a minor injury, Arteta has still stuck him in the team and expected him to play, which obviously isn't probably great for Saka, but for FPL it means you've got a player you can pretty much guarantee is going to play every game in the Premier League for 90 minutes, genuinely because there isn't much competition for that right wing position in the Arsenal team. There are other players that can play on the left, other players that can play in the number 10, but in reality there isn't really any competition for Saka in that spot, and does the defensive work as well, which Arteta really likes, which is why I think he keeps playing regardless of his injury state. Underlying numbers, they've retracted a little bit just because he hasn't really done much in the last few games, but 0.72 expected returns per 90, 9 attacking returns in 10 starts is nothing to be sniffed at. It's really, really good. I just think he's such a good, safe option. Another good safe option, I don't think he's quite as good as Bukayo Saka, but that's reflected in his price, to be honest. Jarrod Bowen at 7.4 million, in my opinion, is probably the best FPL midfielder under 8 million. He's a player, again, similar to Eze and Saka. You can just hold him all season long and he will reward you. He will reward you for being patient as well. He might go through a run of 1 or 2 games where he doesn't get any attacking returns, and then he will. That's the kind of player that Jarrod Bowen is. He's absolutely nailed for West Ham in the Premier League. Plays 90 minutes every game that he starts too. He seems to get chances in every single game I watch him play for West Ham. Sometimes he takes them, sometimes he doesn't. Obviously, that's the story of football, isn't it? But he just seems to get chances against every level of opposition as well. He always seems to just be on the end of crosses, second balls in the box, etc. for West Ham. He's just that kind of player. Sub 8 million for the upside that Jarrod Bowen is providing this season. 8 returns in 11 starts. Obviously not quite as good as Saka, but that's reflected in the price. I just think he's a great, safe option, much like Eze and Saka. The next one, I just wanted to do a bit of a talking shop really around Erling Haaland. Now, he did go off on 45 minutes at the weekend against Bournemouth with what sounded like an ankle. I think it was an ankle injury, wasn't it? But he was seen in training this week, so I think he's going to be fit to play at the weekend. As for would I sell him? No. I don't think there's any chance I would sell Erling Haaland unless you wanted to do an overhaul of your team to potentially get someone like Mo Salah in. I just don't see an option where, a better alternative than just owning Erling Haaland. You could say, downgrade him to someone like Darwin Núñez and then bring in maybe Son into your midfield if you don't have him already. But the talking point with that really is Darwin Núñez has unfortunately been missing a load of chances and it's going to, I think, be a bit of a hit or miss option this season. And as for Spurs, if you want to bring in Son, for example, I think really without Maddison in the team and the defence that Spurs are the defence that Spurs have started with this season, that all changes. I think Spurs are really going to retract, but we're going to kind of go back to the Spurs of old. I'd be really impressed, to be honest, if Ange can get those kind of performances out of the second fiddle Spurs players that he's had from the first team he's been playing. All of that basically means I don't think Son is quite an explosive, explosive's the wrong word, quite the best option to go for in FPL at the moment, particularly with Maddison out injured. And for that reason, I just don't see any genuine alternatives or different ways to play the game if you currently own Erling Haaland. I don't know. Put in the comments if you agree or disagree with that one, but I've seen a bit of chat this week about people considering selling him. I can see why they'd want to, losing patience with an option of the expense that he is, but I just don't see a genuine alternative to having him. Alright, and that's the end of the video. Second installment of this little series. I did it last week. People seem to really enjoy it. To be honest, I did too. It's just nice to talk about FPL in a kind of free sort of flowing environment. Again, I'm not going to be offended if you disagree with any of those players or thoughts that I have. That's what the game's all about. So let me know in the comments what you think of that. If you enjoyed the video, please leave me a like rating, subscribe to the channel, which should be just there, and I'll catch you in the next one.